She was forced to crawl unclothed through the court. Until a human picked her up, the court was built from cold stone, tall walls rising so high that sunlight barely reached the floor. It was meant to make people feel small. Every sound echoed, every step felt watched. On that day the court was full. Officials sat on raised seats. Guards stood in lines. People from the city gathered to witness what they called justice. At the center of the court was a young woman. Her head was lowered, her body shaking. She had been stripped of everything that gave her dignity. No kind words were spoken to her. No explanation was offered. She was treated like an object, not a person. The punishment was not only meant to hurt her body, but to crush her spirit in front of everyone. The chief official read the charges in a flat voice. The words were heavy, but no proof was shown. The woman tried to speak, but she was silenced before she could finish a sentence. Her voice did not matter here. Only power mattered. She was ordered to move forward across the stone floor. Each step felt like fire. Her hands trembled as she tried to protect herself, but the guards shouted for her to obey exactly. The crowd watched. Some turned their faces away in shame. Others stared without emotion. A few even smiled, believing she deserved this treatment. As she moved, her mind drifted to her past. She remembered her home, small but warm. She remembered working long days, trusting people who promised help. One mistake had led to another, and soon she was trapped in a system that did not care about truth. Once labeled guilty, there was no escape. Tears rolled down her face, but she wiped them quickly. Crying only made the guards angrier. She tried to focus on breathing, on surviving the moment. She told herself that if she could endure this, maybe it would end soon. But deep inside, she felt something breaking. Near the edge of the court stood a human man. He was not from this place. He had arrived in the city only days earlier for work. He had heard about the court and came out of curiosity, believing it was a place of order and law. What he saw shocked him. At first, he thought there must be some mistake. Surely no system would treat someone like this in public. He looked around, expecting someone to stop it. No one did. The officials looked bored. The guards looked proud. The crowd stayed silent. His chest tightened as he watched the woman struggle. He noticed how small she looked in the vast space, how alone. He could see fear in her eyes, but also exhaustion. This was not discipline. This was cruelty. He told himself to stay back. He was just one man in a foreign place. Interfering could be dangerous. He had responsibilities, a life to protect, but every step the woman took made it harder to stay still. The woman stumbled. Her knees hit the stone floor. The sound echoed loudly. The guards shouted at her to get up. She tried, but her body refused to respond. She stayed there, shaking, her hands pressed against the cold ground. The crowd murmured. Some thought this was the end of her punishment. Others wanted the guards to force her to continue. The chief official raised his hand, preparing to give another order. That was when the human moved. At first it was just one step forward, then another. The sound of his boots echoed in the silent court. Heads turned. Guards noticed him and shouted for him to stop. He did not. He walked calmly but firmly toward the woman. His heart was pounding, but his face showed determination. He knelt beside her without asking permission. For a brief moment, the woman thought she was imagining it. No one had ever come to her side before. Before the guards could reach him, the human gently lifted her into his arms. He used his own clothing to cover her, shielding her from the crowd. The movement was careful, respectful. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. The entire court froze. Gasps spread through the crowd. Officials stood up from their seats. Guards drew closer, confused and angry. No one had ever challenged the court like this. The woman felt warmth for the first time that day. Not just physical warmth, but something deeper. She clutched the fabric he wrapped around her, her body still shaking. She did not know who he was. She did not know why he was helping her. But she knew one thing: she was no longer alone. The chief official shouted for the guards to arrest the human. The guards hesitated. Something about the scene made them pause. The human stood slowly, still holding the woman, meeting the official's gaze without fear. "This is wrong," he said. His voice was steady, not loud, but it carried through the court. "No crime justifies this." The words felt heavy in the air. People exchanged glances. No one was used to hearing such truth spoken out loud in this place. The woman lifted her head slightly and looked at him. Her eyes were red from tears, but there was confusion in them now, mixed with disbelief. She had expected pain, not protection. The guards surrounded them but did not touch him yet. The officials argued among themselves, unsure how to respond. Punishing him could cause unrest. Letting him go could weaken their authority. The human adjusted his grip, making sure the woman was secure. He did not try to run. He did not beg. He simply stood there, refusing to put her down. In that moment, the court no longer felt powerful. It felt exposed. The woman closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest. For the first time since her arrest, she felt safe, even if only for a moment. Whatever happened next, she would remember this act forever. And as the silence stretched on, everyone in the court understood that something had changed. The silence in the court did not last long. Whispers grew louder, then turned into arguments. Guards looked at one another, unsure what to do. The officials spoke in hurried voices, their confidence shaken. No one remembered a time when someone had openly challenged the court like this. The human still stood in the center, holding the woman carefully. His arms were steady, even though his heart was racing. He knew he had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Still, he did not regret it. The chief official finally stepped forward. His face was tight with anger, but there was fear behind it. "Put her down," he demanded. "You do not understand our laws." The human looked straight at him. "I understand enough," he said calmly. "I understand that this is not justice." His words spread through the court like a slow wave. Some people lowered their eyes. Others watched closely, as if seeing the court for the first time. The woman listened from his arms, barely breathing. Every word felt unreal to her. No one had ever spoken for her before. The guards moved closer, forming a circle. Their hands rested on their weapons, but none of them acted. They were trained to follow orders, yet something held them back. Perhaps it was the quiet strength of the human. Perhaps it was the shame creeping into their hearts. The chief official raised his voice. "You are an outsider," he said. "You have no right to interfere." The human did not shout back. "If seeing cruelty and refusing to accept it is interference," he replied, "then yes, I interfere." The crowd reacted to this. A murmur passed through them. A woman near the back wiped her eyes. An older man clenched his fists. The court had always relied on fear and silence. Now both were cracking. The woman in the human's arms felt something warm spread through her chest. It was not happiness, not yet, but something close to hope. She remembered how she had begged for someone to listen during her trial, how every voice had turned away. This moment felt like a dream she was afraid to wake from. The officials argued again. Some wanted the human arrested immediately. Others worried about the reaction of the crowd. The court's power depended on obedience. Public doubt was dangerous. Finally, one of the younger officials spoke. His voice shook slightly. We should pause this punishment," he said. "This situation has become unstable." The chief official stared at him in disbelief. "You would weaken us," he hissed. But the words were already out. The crowd had heard them. The human felt the tension ease just a little. He adjusted his hold on the woman, careful not to hurt her. She looked up at him again, her eyes searching his face. She wanted to speak, but her throat felt tight. "You're safe," he whispered quietly, just for her. "I won't let them hurt you." She nodded faintly. Tears slipped down her face, but this time they were not only from pain. The guards were ordered to step back. Slowly they did. The circle opened. The woman gasped softly as she realized she was no longer surrounded. The court felt different now. Smaller. Less certain. The chief official clenched his jaw. "Take them both to the side chamber," he ordered. We will decide what to do." The human agreed, but he did not put the woman down. He carried her out of the center of the court, every step watched by hundreds of eyes. No one laughed now. No one cheered. The mood had changed completely. In the side chamber, the air was cooler and quieter. The guards closed the doors, leaving only a few officials inside. The woman was gently set down on a bench. The human gave her his outer garment fully, turning his back for a moment so she could cover herself properly. She held the fabric tightly, her hands still shaking. When she looked up again, her face showed fear mixed with gratitude. "Why?" she asked softly. Her voice was weak but clear. The human met her eyes. "Because no one should be treated like that," he said. "Not ever." The simplicity of the answer made her chest ache. She nodded, unable to speak again. The officials questioned the human for a long time. They asked his name, his purpose in the city, his reasons for interfering. He answered honestly. He did not insult them. He did not threaten them. He only spoke about dignity, about humanity, about the cost of silence. Outside the chamber, the crowd waited. News spread quickly through the city. People whispered about what they had seen. Some were angry. Some were inspired. Many were confused. But no one forgot the image of a single man standing against the court. After hours of discussion, the officials returned. Their decision was clear in their tired faces. The woman's punishment was canceled. They claimed it was due to procedural errors. They said the case needed review. They used careful words to protect their authority, but everyone knew the truth. The court had been forced to stop. The woman felt her knees weaken when she heard the words. She pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. For the first time since her arrest, she was free to breathe. The human was warned never to interfere again. He accepted the warning without argument. He had already done what mattered. They were released together at the edge of the court grounds. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft colors. The woman stood beside the human, unsure what to do next. Her life had been broken, and she did not know how to rebuild it. "You don't have to thank me," the human said gently, sensing her thoughts. "Just live." She looked at him, really looked at him. "You gave me back my life," she said quietly. "I will never forget that." He nodded, his expression calm. "Neither will they," he replied, glancing back at the court. In the days that followed, the city changed in small but important ways. People spoke more openly. Questions were asked. Other cases were reviewed. The court did not fall, but it was no longer untouchable. The woman found shelter and help from people who had been too afraid to act before. She healed slowly, inside and out. The memory of the court still haunted her, but it no longer defined her. Sometimes she thought about that moment on the stone floor when she believed everything was over. And then she remembered the sound of footsteps walking toward her instead of away. As for the human, he returned to his work, carrying the experience with him. He did not see himself as a hero. He only knew that one choice had changed 2 lives, and perhaps many more. In the end, the story spread far beyond the city, not as a tale of power, but as a reminder. Even in the darkest places, one act of courage can restore dignity, and one human choice can rewrite a fate. Weeks passed after the day the court stopped the punishment, but the memory did not fade. The city looked the same on the surface, yet something underneath had shifted. People spoke in lower voices when they passed the court. Guards stood straighter. Officials avoided the public more than before. The woman now lived in a small room behind a workshop owned by an elderly couple. They had watched the court that day. They had seen her carried out, wrapped in dignity instead of shame. Guilt had pushed them to act. They offered her shelter without asking questions. At night, she still woke up suddenly, her heart racing. The sound of stone floors haunted her dreams. Some mornings she could barely bring herself to step outside. Healing was slow, and some wounds did not show on the skin. Still, she tried. She helped in the workshop, cleaning tools and sorting supplies. Her hands shook at first, but she kept going. Every simple task reminded her that she was still alive, still useful. That mattered. People in the neighborhood began to recognize her. Some looked away, ashamed of having watched her suffering in silence. Others nodded gently, unsure what to say. No one mocked her. That alone felt like a miracle. The human did not stay in the city center. He moved to a quieter area to avoid attention. His action had spread through whispers and stories. Some called him brave, others called him foolish. He ignored both. He returned to his daily work, but life did not return to normal. Strangers approached him, asking if the story was true. He answered simply, "Yes." Then he walked away. One evening, as the sun dipped low, he saw the woman standing across the street from the place he stayed. She looked hesitant, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. He crossed the street slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said. "I didn't know how before." "You don't owe me anything," he replied gently. "I know," she said, "but I needed to say it." They walked together for a while, speaking little. Silence felt safe between them. There was no pressure, no expectation, just two people sharing space. As days turned into weeks, more stories began to surface. Others who had been punished unfairly came forward. Families demanded reviews. A few officials resigned quietly. The court issued new rules, careful words meant to show progress. Change did not come fast, but it came. The woman heard about these changes through whispers in the market. Each story made her chest tighten. She realized that her suffering had not been meaningless. It had opened a door, even if only a crack. One afternoon, she stood outside the court gates, staring at the tall stone walls. Fear rose in her throat, but she did not run. She wanted to face it, not to enter, but to stand outside and prove to herself that it no longer owned her. The human found her there by chance. He did not speak right away. He stood beside her, letting her decide if she wanted to talk. "I thought this place would always control me," she said finally. "Now it feels smaller." He nodded. "That's because it is." She smiled faintly, the first real smile since the court. "You changed more than you know." He shook his head. "You survived, that was your strength." That night she slept without waking from fear for the first time. Months passed. The city slowly returned to routine, but something important remained different. People remembered. Fear no longer worked the same way. Silence was no longer guaranteed. The woman found steady work. She saved small amounts of money. She laughed sometimes. She learned that healing did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing to live anyway. The human eventually prepared to leave the city. His work had ended, and staying longer would only keep attention on him. The night before his departure, the woman came to see him. "I heard you're leaving," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Tomorrow." She felt a tightness in her chest, unexpected and sharp. "I wanted to say goodbye." They stood quietly. The air felt heavy with words unsaid. "You gave me my life back," she said. "I don't know how to repay that." "Live well," he said. "That's enough." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but no shame in them now. When morning came, he left without ceremony. No crowd followed him. No speeches were made. He walked out as he had walked in, just a human. The woman watched the road long after he disappeared from sight. Then she turned back toward the city, toward her future. Years later, the story was still told, not as gossip, but as a reminder. Parents told their children. Workers whispered it during breaks. Officials pretended not to hear. The woman grew older, stronger. She helped others who had nowhere to go. She listened when they spoke. She believed them. Sometimes, when asked where her strength came from, she answered simply, "Someone once refused to look away." And in that simple truth, her story lived on. Years passed, and the city continued to change in quiet ways. The stone court still stood in the center, tall and heavy, but it no longer felt untouchable. People walked past it without lowering their heads. Some even stopped to look at it with questioning eyes. Power was still there, but fear had weakened. The woman had built a life she once believed was impossible. She now lived in a modest home near the edge of the city. It was small, with simple furniture and sunlight that reached every corner. To her, it felt like freedom. She worked with a local group that helped people who had been wronged or abandoned. Many came with stories similar to hers, stories of silence, fear, and injustice. She listened patiently, never interrupting. She believed them because she knew what it meant not to be believed. People respected her, not because she was loud or powerful, but because she understood pain without judging it. When she spoke, others listened. Sometimes late at night memories returned. The cold stone floor, the echoing voices, the feeling of being completely alone. But the memories no longer controlled her. She had learned how to breathe through them, how to remind herself that she survived. On the anniversary of the day everything changed, she walked toward the court, not out of fear but purpose. A small crowd had gathered outside, not for punishment but for a public meeting. Officials were present, standing on the same steps where judgment had once been declared without mercy. Now they were forced to listen. The woman stood among the crowd, unnoticed at first. When it was time for people to speak, she stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. She told her story simply. She did not describe pain in detail. She spoke about dignity, about silence, about how one moment of courage had changed her life. She did not mention the human's name. She did not need to. Everyone knew the story. "I am not here for revenge," she said. "I am here so no one else has to live what I lived." The crowd was silent when she finished. Even the officials did not speak right away. That day, new rules were announced, real ones, not empty promises. Independent reviews, witness protections, limits on public punishment. The changes were not perfect, but they were real. The woman walked home feeling lighter than she had in years. Far from the city, the human lived a quiet life. He had moved often, never staying too long in one place. Not because he was hiding, but because he preferred simplicity. He worked honest jobs. He helped when he could. He did not seek attention. Sometimes people recognized him. Sometimes they thanked him. He accepted their words politely, but he never let the story define him. To him, it was just one moment where he chose not to look away. One afternoon, a letter arrived at his door. It had no official seal, no grand language, just simple handwriting. The woman wrote about her life, about the people she helped, about the city changing slowly. She did not ask him to return. She only wanted him to know that his choice had mattered. He read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and placed it somewhere safe. That night he slept peacefully. Back in the city, the woman continued her work. She grew older, wiser. Younger people sought her guidance. They asked how she found the strength to stand again. She always answered the same way. "Strength came after someone showed me kindness." One day a young girl asked her, "Do you hate the court?" The woman thought for a moment. "No," she said. "I remember it. That's different." The girl nodded, not fully understanding but feeling the truth. Years later, the court building was renovated. Its walls were cleaned. New symbols replaced old ones. Some wanted to erase the past completely. The woman stood against that idea. "Do not erase," she said. "Remember so we don't repeat." A small plaque was placed near the entrance. It did not name anyone. It simply read, "Dignity belongs to all." People paused when they read it. Some smiled. Some felt uncomfortable. That was good. Change required discomfort. In her later years, the woman spent more time resting. Her body slowed, but her mind remained clear. Children visited her, bringing stories, questions, laughter. One evening, as the sun set, she sat by her window and watched the sky change colors. She thought about the long path she had walked, from shame to strength, from silence to voice. She did not see herself as a victim anymore. She saw herself as proof. Proof that dignity could be restored. Proof that one human choice could echo through time. When she passed away quietly in her sleep, the city mourned her, not with fear but respect. People gathered near the court, placing simple flowers by the plaque. They spoke her name softly. They remembered her courage. Somewhere far away, the human heard the news through a letter. He sat quietly for a long time, holding the paper. She lived well, he said to himself, and that was enough. The story did not end with tragedy. It ended with meaning. A court that learned to listen. A woman who reclaimed her life. A human who refused to look away. And a simple truth that remained long after all of them were gone. Even in the darkest moments, dignity can be restored by one act of courage.